Welcome to another episode of Fordify Live. Today's topic, we're going to be taking a deep dive into the challenges and the mistakes that people are making with ChatGPT and what you need to know as a business owner or an executive, as a franchise brand, because so many people are seduced by this new tool, which is cool. There's also some serious drawbacks. Now, when I thought about this topic, I thought, who would be a great guest for this? And I want to bring in one of my mastermind partners, Joel Block. He's a colleague, he's a friend. We're in the $1 Million Speakers Group together, and he's really somebody who's created a whole brand around being the advantage player. So please welcome Joel Block to today's episode of Fordify Live. Joel, welcome to the show.
Ford, how are you, man? Good to see you.
I'm doing great. I'm so glad you're here because everybody's getting all excited about ChatGPT, and I am too. But we were talking earlier, and I said, you know what? We need to go live and talk about this. So what are you seeing? And describe to me some of the things that we were talking about before of the challenges that people are going to have with this thing.
Well, let me before we jump into some of the details, let's talk about, you introduced it to me a month and a half ago, right at the very beginning of when this happened. We all got excited about it because there's a lot of flash in the pan. This is something to be very excited about. And we got to remember that AI is brand new. A lot of what companies call AI is really not. This really is AI, and it's been greatly funded. But here's the deal: is that this goes a long way at cocktail parties. My wife and I went to dinner somewhere, and I was telling some people about this who'd never heard about this. And we were, after some wine and some booze, we were putting in some very funny prompts. We were asking it some really funny questions. You can imagine some of the funny things you could ask it. And it was writing letters of apology for us making a mistake and having an accident and doing it, making a mess in their pool. You can imagine all the funny things that you could come up with. And it was just hysterical. But in reality, when you really push the pedal to the metal, this is the very, very first generation of this technology. And it is great compared to where we've come from, but we've got a long way to go. So put it like that.
And so they've got a long way to go, but what are some of the mistakes? We were talking about how the fact that everybody's all excited about writing this, but the answers are limited to like textbook answers, right? So,
yeah.
So as business owners, you have to be really careful. So what are some of the things that we need to be careful about using it? I have some, but I know you do too.
Yeah. So let's put it like this. I think a lot about competitive advantage. So I asked it the question, what is Tesla's competitive advantage? And it came up with 8 things. And what is a Netflix competitive advantage? And came up with 8 things. And they weren't the same 8, by the way, as for Tesla. They were different. So it was really very smart. But the truth is that those were not really creative answers. They were business school answers. They were textbook answers. So if business owners want their strategy to be written by a college student, then this is perfect. This is it's brilliant. It's further than anything has ever come before, but I'm telling you, it's got a long way to go. It's really at the college level. There wasn't really the human creativity that was built in to these answers. The way I think about it, these were plays. They weren't advantage plays. An advantage play is something that puts you at the top of your game. So that's really the way that I think about this. And for a first generation, incredibly impressive, but there's some limitations, and I think people need to be very careful not to get overexcited about this, because if you put out these ideas as your own, which a lot of people probably are, they're good answers, they're okay answers, but they're not. Put it like this: let's think about this as the first draft of an essay. If you think of it as the first draft of an essay, and you got to kind of polish it up a little bit, now we're talking.
Yeah, because it's really more because we know that it's machine learning, and so what it's done is it's read everything on the internet as of a certain date, and it's getting smarter and smarter, but it can't necessarily create original, new, creative thoughts in the level that you should be thinking about. Now, I know people will argue. You can enter it in the comments if you've got questions, because we are live right now on Facebook, on LinkedIn, and on YouTube. So if you have comments, put them in there. We'll try to answer them throughout the show here. Really, the strategy is use ChatGPT and whatever variation. So that includes Jasper and Quillbot, and there's hundreds of different modalities that people have used and branded it. But the engine itself is ChatGPT, and it's continuing to grow. But the challenge is that it can't replace the human factor. Now, I know I've done a couple other live episodes about this, but it's coming up again and again because people are getting seduced by the technology. They're jumping in with both feet. They're thinking that it can do all these plans and replace the people on their team. It's not. because it can only give you a certain level of expertise. So you still need to have talented professionals that can take a look at it. So what I look at, Joel, is there's 4 levels of information or data. Like at the lowest level, you've got data, and then you've got information, which is data organized. Then you have knowledge, which is you've taken the data and the information, and now it's into some format that you can get distinctions from. And then there's wisdom. So data, information, knowledge, and wisdom. ChatGPT can give you information and a little bit of knowledge, but it can't give you the wisdom. Would you agree with that?
I would mostly agree with that. I mean, I kind of wonder, at some point as it gets smarter and smarter, is wisdom kind of built into it getting smarter and smarter? I wonder about that. I don't know the answer. And Ford is probably something that's even a higher level than what you've identified on that pyramid of 4 things that we need to kind of identify, because human beings. Well, there's a couple things going on here. One is human beings are going to have to raise the bar. I mean, this has been going on for a long time. Companies come along and they force other companies to raise the bar. That's the beauty of our capitalist system. So Amazon comes along and they have done a better job with e-commerce than any other company. They've made it easier. They've made it faster. They've made it smarter. They've made it predictive. It's just better. It's a great system. And other companies, that's the bar other companies have to reach to. But many, many companies have raised the bar on other companies. And this is raising the bar on human beings. If you're an agency like you guys are and you produce material, this is going to force you to raise the bar. The bar has not raised above you. I mean, the GPT has not outsourced you. It has not replaced you. It's going to force you to be better. And this is the challenge that people, it's like a horse race. And when one horse gets a little ahead of the other horse, it motivates you, Ford, for example, to do better. And that's what's going to happen here. It's going to force you to do better. And that's really all what this is about. So there have been lots of situations, here I see a number of things. If I could share a couple of ideas.
Sure, let's go for it.
One is that there are cottage industries that are going to grow around this thing all over the place. A cottage industry is something, for example, every time the government comes up with a new regulation, cottage industries form. When eBay came out, cottage industries started forming about selling on eBay and all these different things.
They sure did.
Mailbox places started doing shipping for eBay, and then of course,
and there were all these stores that you could bring your products to, and they would list them on eBay, and it's just like on cottage industries for ChatGPT now. Now there's this whole term, prompt engineer. I'm a prompt engineer, right? You just know how to ask ChatGPT a question, but now they're putting their LinkedIn title, I'm a prompt engineer. No, you've just learned the nuances, right?
So the bottom line is that this technology is going to create all these new jobs and all these new industries and all these new things are going to start happening. And we need to expect that. We can perceive it's going to happen because it's happened over and over again. We can predict with great accuracy that that's going to happen. It's one of the things that does happen. But the raise the bar thing is maybe the most important thing. Human beings need to raise the bar. They're going to need to get more educated. And this is going to be hard on some people. For maybe white collar people who are used to continuously improving, they're used to continuously taking continuing education. They're used to doing that. For people that maybe are more manual labor, more hand skill kind of things, that are not necessarily used to writing and doing other kinds of idea generation, this may be much more difficult for them. But it's not just applying to people. Companies need to be smarter. The way companies operate needs to be better. And if you think that you can move from human beings to having ChatGPT start doing your work, I think you're missing the point here. I think it can do a lot of the groundwork. For example, a lot of things are outsourced to other countries. We outsource a lot of things to India, for example. A lot of tax work in the United States is outsourced to India. The tax work itself, the tax planning, the strategizing, the really complicated part, the part that's done by CPAs and attorneys, is not really done overseas. It's the data entry, it's the manual entry onto the forms. Some of that stuff is done. Some of the lower level stuff is done, but the strategy and the high level work, and that hasn't changed under ChatGPT. It's just bringing that whole level of adjustment to a new set of factors. So Certain legal work is done overseas, certain accounting work is done overseas, lots of other things are done overseas. Now we're going to have writing and other kinds of things being outsourced, but instead of overseas, it's being outsourced to a computer,
Yeah.
which
So you want to think of, yeah, go ahead.
by the way, is expected to generate $1 billion in fees to OpenAI next year. And we can talk about the financial model that
Right.
they have too, because that's pretty fascinating.
Yeah. So the key is, if you're new to this whole technology, we're talking about OpenAI, our chat.openai.com is the engine. If you guys don't have an account already, if you've been on the sidelines, you can Google it. There's all types of paid services that you can use too. So, but that's not what I want everybody to really think about in today's episode. It's really about how do you stay competitive and relevant in a world where the bar just got raised to have an advantage over your competition. So you tell me a little bit about your story and this whole advantage thing, because you really, that's your brand, it's what you're working around, and share what it means to be an advantage player. And more importantly, what can our listeners and viewers do to become advantage players in the marketplace?
Yeah, well, the phrase advantage play and advantage player comes straight from Las Vegas. It's what they call people who can beat their unbeatable games. So if you are an expert card player, and I was a professional blackjack player when I was a youngster, and I was always referred to as an advantage player because I could beat their game, and it made them angry. I mean, it really upset them that there are people who could do that. And so, when you understand the game better than other people, when you can apply the rules of the game, and it's not cheating, it's using my mind only, and that's what we would do. But think about it like this: you got 7 people sitting at a blackjack table. All 7 people see exactly the same information. 6 of the people, they don't know what day of the week it is, what time of the day it is. They don't know what's going on. They don't know what they have for breakfast, what they're doing for dinner. They don't know anything happening around them. And one person at the table knows so much about what's happening that they know what cards are likely coming next. They know how to bet their money. They know how to play the game at a level that is way beyond everybody else. And that's true in business too. There's, the Pareto principle,
Yep.
1 out of 5 people, give or take, is the ones doing all the selling, doing all the work.
Yeah. 20% of your efforts produce 80% of your results. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and 20% of your people produce 80% of your results too, right? That's kind of how it is. So it's really the same thing in blackjack. And the advantage players are those 20% people. I think they're actually even less than that. I think it's much less than 20%.
Yeah.
And our objective is to get people to play at the top of their game, do things other people don't do, ask questions other people don't ask, take actions other people don't take, and really make it happen in a way other people don't make it happen. And those people are advantage players. And when you apply the strategies, we have advantage strategies, we have all these different approaches. And when you do these kind of things, you end up with an edge above other people. And if we can make executives even 1% better, just 1%, that's an enormous thing, because those are the producers. So think about what happens in companies when they get just a little better. And let me tell you something, Ford, you're either playing with an advantage or you're playing with a disadvantage. There is no in between. It's one or the other. Pick one. I'd rather be an advantage player and play with an advantage than the alternative.
Yeah. And for those of you listening, to be an advantage player, again, you just need to be 1 to 5% better than your competition. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be a little bit better, because it's, where the bar is set in business. People say, I want to be great or I want to be good. Well, great is just enough to, great is good. Amazing is great. You need to be outstanding and have an advantage player. So it's elevating, it's raising the bar to that next step. So for those of you watching and listening to this, whether you're watching live or on the replay, I want you to be thinking about, how do you use new technologies in a way that helps you get an advantage, but understanding that if you're using these technologies, at least initially as we're recording this and going live, it's still in its infancy and it's not a replacement. It doesn't replace the human factor, the creativity, the way the personal relationships. It's going to make the personal relationships even more valuable. So it's made my Fordify show we have here in the podcast on Fordify even more valuable because it's real. This is not AI generated.
Let's think of it like this. There are so many examples of the bar going higher and higher. When the internet first got rolling here, let's say maybe in the late 1900s, which seems like a tremendously long time ago, doesn't it? When you say it like
1994 or 95, somewhere in there.
One of the first industries to go were all these recruiters, the human being recruiters. and they got replaced by monster.com and these other things. But you know what ended up happening? It made the recruiters even more valuable. You know why? Because the monsters of the world would generate hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of leads. And then the HR people would say, I don't have time to look at 500 resumes. And then they'd call the recruiter and they'd say, look, I get it. It's a little more money to deal with you. But the truth is, I'd rather have you give me 5 resumes than me have to deal with 500. And this pattern, the computers can generate enormous amounts of volume, but it's not all smart.
That's
a lot
right.
of that volume is not really perfect. Here's another great example. I remember in the 80s when computers were brand new, and remember those printers? They had those mine
The
had
dot matrix printers.
Yeah, dot matrix, and the ball would spin around and it would hit the thing, and it was just text on a page. And then all of a sudden, as computers got a little stronger, somebody created this desktop publishing software, and it would make beautiful pages. And it's like, wow, that's amazing. So what happened was that when you got a hold of that software, all of a sudden you now could do work that was 10 times better than before. But did that replace designers? No, it forced designers to get a little better, because the templates that we all used, everybody could tell they were templates. Everybody could recognize that.
Right.
Now,
And it's the same thing that's happened with Microsoft Word, and you're talking actually about Quark and Corel Draw back in the day, where because I've been in direct response marketing for years, and Joel, we used to have to cut things out with a scissors and use a glue stick to make all our ads, and then we were able to do it digitally, and we thought we were all that in a bag of chips. And then it went, and it's just accelerating. Now there's Canva and all these AI tools that can take your content and your transcripts and repurpose it in Synthesia. There's all these tools.
But the important point is that the technology brought the masses up 80%, but there was still room for the best professional designers to do even better.
Yep.
And maybe it forced, and that's what the ChatGPT discussion, that's this whole discussion, is the advantage players are still playing above the line. They're playing above the bar. And that's what we have to get people to think about. Part of the advantage play here forward is not understanding the tool, it's understanding the limitations of the tool. Because when you understand the limitations of the tool, then you can correct and adapt for those limitations when other people are not thinking about those things. And that's the advantage play that I see.
No, I 100% correct. Well, I really appreciate you taking your time out of your busy schedule today to join me for this episode of Fordify Live. For those of you watching, if you want to check Joel out, his website's right there. If you're listening to the podcast, it's theadvantageplayer.com. His name is Joel Block, just for those listeners that aren't actually watching us on the screen. Any final thoughts that you would tell people as an action step or takeaway on how they can become advantage players and use that top 20%?
Well, first of all, you have to adopt technologies. You have to be in the middle of the circle in order to play the game.
Yeah, you got to be in the water, right?
Right. You got to be there. If you're not playing, then you certainly can't get better. And it's okay to make some mistakes. Nobody bats 1,000. I mean, listen, the very best baseball players on the planet, bat 300, and the very best golfers win 2 out of 10 tournaments. So nobody bats 1,000. That's just So don't worry about making some mistakes. Get in the middle of the circle, play the game, and test out these tools. These are great tools, and just know that they have limitations. And as long as you're aware of them, go to town and make it happen. And that's the first step you can take to put yourself on the track to be an advantage player and making winning inevitable.
Awesome. Well, this is Ford Saeks. We go live Wednesdays at 11 a.m. Central on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook. And today we've had our guest, Joel Block, from The Advantage Player. Joel, say goodbye to everybody, and we'll see everybody next week on Fordify Live.